Some summers don't begin with sunlight, they begin with a step taken in flight. A bride in a white dress, standing at a crossroads, chose not the sound of church bells, but a quiet dock where a man lived with all the words he never got to say. This isn't a story about finding love again, it's a story about someone who once loved enough to let go, giving hope to a soul that had lost its way. That summer in Carolina held no miracles, only wind, sea, an old boat called June's Song, and two strangers. But sometimes that's all it takes to change a life forever. If you believe that some loves last only a season, but live forever in the heart, stay a while and listen to this story with me. And if you love tales that are tender, true, and just a little bittersweet, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being here. The autumn sea breeze in Carolina is unlike any other. It carries the salt of memories and the echoes of words left unspoken. Eli Klein crouched beneath the hull of an old wooden boat, his sun-weathered hands gripping a rusted wrench. Beneath layers of sawdust and the scent of oil, his eyes remained clear, as if untouched by the passage of time. He meticulously tightened each bolt, unhurried, as if this boat, an aged ivory vessel named June's Song, was the last thing in the world that needed his care. The distant rhythm of waves blended with the soft clinking of the anchor chain against the mast, creating a melody Eli had grown accustomed to over the past 20 years. On afternoons like this, when the sunlight turned a shade of bronze and the children's laughter in town began to fade, he often found solace in silence. But today was different. Footsteps crunching on gravel interrupted his thoughts. Eli didn't look up, merely muttered in a hoarse voice.
"The dock's closed. Unless you're a friend. Come back tomorrow."
No response came. Only the breeze carried a faint scent of perfume, mingled with sea salt. Then a voice emerged, almost lost in the wind.
"I don't know where else to go."
Eli raised an eyebrow. Slowly, he stood, brushing dust from his faded jeans, and turned to face the stranger. A woman in her mid-20s stood before him, her dark hair tousled, high heels dusted with sand. She still wore a white wedding dress, now askew and stained. Her face was streaked with mascara, eyes swollen from tears. In her hand, she held a wilted floral crown, petals barely clinging on. Eli remained silent for a long moment, simply observing. The sea behind her seemed to hold its breath.
"You're a bride."
I was supposed to be
"Where's the groom?"
still at the church, probably waiting.
"That's rough."
She let out a dry laugh and pulled up a weathered wooden chair, its legs creaking against the dock.
I drove here, not sure why. Just remembered my grandmother once mentioned a boat repairman who helped her through the hardest time of her life.
"Your grandmother's name?"
Ruth Gardner. She lived here all her life. Passed away last year.
Eli nodded. A flicker of recognition crossed his eyes, a shadow. A laugh, then vanished.
"Ruth. Yes. She made the best apple pies on this coast, and she could keep a secret better than anyone."
So, are you the man she spoke of?
"I'm Eli."
I'm Maggie.
The breeze picked up again, gentler this time. Maggie brushed her hair back, eyes drifting toward the boat.
June's Song. That's the boat's name.
"It's more than just a name."
He stepped closer, placing a hand on the boat's bow as if caressing something still alive. The wood felt cold, but the memories burned warm in his heart.
"You know, Maggie, some summers come and go, leaving sunburns and mosquito bites. But others, they arrive and never truly leave."
Was that summer with my grandmother?
Eli looked directly at her, eyes distant.
"No, Maggie, that summer was with me."
Maggie fell silent. In that moment, she was no longer a runaway bride, but someone standing at the threshold of a deeper, perhaps more painful, story than she'd ever known.
Would you tell me about it?
Eli didn't answer immediately. He pulled up another chair, sitting across from her. The sea breeze fluttered the white fabric draped over Maggie's shoulders, like a lost bird finding its way.
That summer, I was 28, a boat repairman. Just like now. Nothing special, not wealthy, no grand dreams. I had an old radio, a rusty pickup, and a routine every evening. I'd sit by the dock, listen to Patsy Cline, and watch the sunset.
He paused, eyes lighting up as if rewinding time in his mind.
Then one day, she walked in. June.
Maggie waited, anticipation in her gaze. Eli began to recount, his voice steady, resonant like waves gently eroding the shore.
It was the first day of June, not named after her. Just a coincidence. I was replacing planks on a sailboat when she walked through the workshop gate. Yellow sundress, hair tied up, holding a thick book. She didn't smile, just frowned as if something smelled off. I wasn't planning to greet her. I rarely spoke to strangers, especially women who looked like they stepped out of a magazine. But then her book fell. She bent to pick it up. The sea breeze tousled her hair wildly, and I saw her first smile.
Did you fall in love at first sight?
No, I don't believe in love at first sight. But there was something in that smile that made me want to see it again, and I watched it all that summer.
That summer, the Carolina sky was impossibly blue. It stretched like silk pulled taut across the ocean. No clouds, no flaws. The sea breeze swept through the dock, bringing with it familiar sounds, the gentle creak of boats rubbing against each other, the shrill cries of seagulls, and from the corner of the old wooden workshop, the static hum of a radio playing a forgotten Patsy Cline love song. Eli stood shirtless, sweat glistening at the nape of his neck. He held a plank of wood steady against the boat's hull, each hammer strike ringing clear, strong, and deliberate. He didn't look up when he heard heels clicking on gravel, but that voice, he couldn't mistake it.
You always work to sad music like this.
Eli turned slightly, brow furrowed half in jest. June stood there, holding a straw hat in one hand, her high ponytail swaying in the breeze. The yellow dress clung gently to her waist and fell to her knees like sunlight in motion.
Sad music helps people focus.
It makes me want to jump into the ocean.
The ocean's not a bad place. Salt water cleanses a lot of things.
Even memories.
Especially memories.
She didn't answer, just smiled faintly, circling behind him to eye the boat he was fixing.
What's its name?
Doesn't have one. Not finished yet.
If I owned it, I'd call it Moonflower, a flower that only blooms at night. Seems fitting for something that floats.
Never thought of naming a boat like you would a cat.
June laughed soft, but it rippled like waves.
And you, what's your name?
Eli.
I'm June. Like the month.
Funny coincidence.
How so?
June's when the sardines spawn off the coast. I hate June.
I like it. It means summer break.
Silence settled briefly. June walked to the boat's edge, her fingers trailing over the rough wood.
Can I help?
You're wearing a yellow dress and heels. I'm not sure you'd survive the sawdust.
I once used a jigsaw in art class.
What did you study?
Literature, theory, and creative writing, useless to the world, but it makes me talk too much.
I figured.
And you strike me as the Hemingway-type Budweiser drinker. Dreams in straight lines.
Close, except I prefer Steinbeck.
June paused, her eyes flickered surprised for the first time.
So do I.
They looked at each other for a moment. Something wordless passed between them. Then Eli nudged an old wooden chair toward her.
Sit, if you're not afraid of dust.
I'm more afraid of the invisible things. Like promises. Like love.
Eli didn't reply, but he remembered that line even years later. They sat there, a sharp-tongued city girl and a quiet man with hands worn by wood. Neither tried to impress. They didn't have to. The sea breeze did that for them. After a while, June stood, brushing off her dress, eyes on a moss-green pickup truck baking in the sun.
That yours?
Yep.
I've never ridden in a pickup.
I'm guessing you've never had fried fish at the dock diner either.
I've never lived this slowly before.
Eli tapped the radio, shook it until the static cleared, then turned up the volume. A Ray Charles classic poured through the speakers. He looked at June.
Wanna drive?
June laughed, shaking her head.
I want to sit beside you. Let you drive.
The truck rumbled as it shifted gears. Tires crunched down the dirt road, leaving behind the workshop, the blue sea, and the gulls. Before them stretched pine groves, old wooden houses, and weathered signs faded by sun and salt. Inside, no one spoke. The old music filled the quiet. June sat near the window, hair flung back by the wind. Eli glanced at her through the rearview mirror, and for the first time, he wondered why a girl like that had ended up in a place like this.
How long you staying?
Just the summer. Maybe less. Maybe more.
You don't seem like someone who sticks to plans.
I used to plan my whole life. Life didn't cooperate.
So now you let it lead.
No, I just stopped to breathe.
They reached a lakeside meadow where the town shot fireworks every July. Eli cut the engine. June stepped out, her heels sinking slightly into soft grass. She sat down, arms behind her, face tilted toward the sky. Eli didn't join her. He leaned against the truck.
Do you think people meet not to stay, but just to be remembered?
I think sometimes people meet to learn how to bear loss.
Sounds like a line from a French film.
Never seen one.
You should try.
The sun tipped west. The light turned gold, thick like honey. June closed her eyes. The wind brushed her lashes, lifted a strand of hair across her cheek.
Thanks for the ride. Even though I never asked.
Some things don't need asking.
Like what?
Like sitting next to someone and feeling peace.
June opened her eyes, looked at him. Her lips parted as if to speak, then closed again.
I'll come back, if you don't mind.
I don't.
Good. I tend to repeat the things I like.
Eli nodded. Silence fell again, but this time not out of awkwardness. It was the silence of something beginning, something unnamed. June walked back to the truck, tapped gently on the side panel.
Let's go. Driver. Tomorrow. I'll bring the cookies my grandma taught me. No promises on taste.
I've eaten dried sardines raw. I think I'll survive.
She laughed. The door shut. The truck turned around, leaving the meadow and their first evening behind where summer began, and something unspoken had quietly slipped into both of their hearts. The next day, a light veil of clouds draped over the Carolina sky like soft chiffon, dulling the morning sun into something gentle. Eli was wiping down a panel of weathered wood on the old boat when he heard familiar heels crunching on gravel behind him. He didn't turn around right away.
You're 30 minutes late. I'm beginning to question your reliability.
I brought cookies. If you complain, I'll have to question your taste buds.
She stepped closer, holding out a red tin box. Her dress today was a floral one, simple, but it reminded Eli of the faded murals in his mother's old coffee shop. He took the box, popped the lid, and sniffed.
Cinnamon and something else.
Don't ask. Family secret.
If I drop dead, will you call an ambulance?
I will, but I'll say you died from love at first bite.
Eli chuckled, chewing cautiously. Crumbs broke off onto his hand.
Not bad. A little dry.
I knew it. My grandma's oven is older than America.
She sat on the wooden step beside him, pulled out a handkerchief, and dabbed the sweat from Eli's forehead like it was the most natural thing in the world.
Do you always work alone?
Got used to it. People usually don't last more than an hour around me.
I've lasted 90 minutes, and maybe you're my exception.
A seagull swooped near a wooden crate, squawked hoarsely, then vanished into the sky. Both of them watched it go.
Have you ever left this place?
I did, 2 years in Texas, 1 in Idaho, then came back.
Why?
Some places you go to just to know you don't belong there.
June fell quiet for a moment. Then she turned to him, her gaze brushing something deeper inside.
What about people? Have you ever loved someone?
Eli set his hammer down and leaned back against the hull.
There was someone, a long time ago, but we weren't headed in the same direction.
Did it hurt?
Not like a knife wound, more like carrying a cut in the rain. No one sees it, but it keeps bleeding.
June held her breath for a beat. She looked away, as if she didn't want him to see her eyes in that moment. But Eli saw a flicker of something he knew too well, something blurred and aching, and...
I loved once, but I ran before it became anything.
Scared.
Certain it would end.
Everything ends, doesn't make it less worth having.
They didn't speak for a while, didn't need to. Eventually, June stood, brushed off her dress.
I want to learn to row.
This one's not finished, but I've got another, smaller...
I don't need a yacht. I need a paddle, and you facing me.
Eli smiled, shaking his head, but his eyes softened like the sky after rain. He led her around the back of the workshop, where a small dugout canoe lay upside down on a wooden rack. They pushed it down to the water together. June's shoes caught in the sand, and they both laughed when she nearly fell into him. In that moment, Eli caught her by the shoulders, a light touch, but enough to make his heart pound. June didn't pull away. She looked at him, head tilted slightly.
You think I can do it?
I think you've never not done what you set your mind to.
They rowed to the middle of the bay. The water was calm, the sky calmer still, and in that hush, only the sound of water parting under their oars, and two hearts beating out of sync. June laughed this time, genuinely, unguarded. Eli watched her, and in his head, his mother's words echoed, "If you ever see someone laugh like it's the first time in their life, don't let them slip away." And in that instant he knew he was no longer the same man he was yesterday. That afternoon, clouds rolled in from the ocean like a dark curtain smudged with ink. By the time Eli and June returned to the dock, the wind had shifted, carrying the scent of approaching rain. They had just pulled the small boat ashore when the first drop fell heavy, round and cold. Neither said a word. Eli glanced at the sky, then grabbed June's hand and tugged.
Hurry, I know a place nearby.
You're not hiding me under your truck, are you?
No, under a roof.
They ran across the dirt path, rain picking up, drumming hard on the old sheet metal. Eli led her down a narrow trail to an abandoned wooden house, its faded signboard barely hanging on bakery since 1952. One side of the awning remained intact, just big enough for two people to stand close together. Their breath came warm in the cool rain. June laughed, her hair soaked, dress clinging to her thighs. Eli looked at her, still holding her hand, a fact he hadn't noticed until June gave a gentle squeeze.
My grandma used to talk about this place. Blueberry jam cinnamon rolls. The whole town lined up.
My mom worked here. I was 14.
So you were the kid banging the drum in the 4th of July parade.
The kid who missed every beat.
June laughed and sat down on the rotting step, her dress still dripping. Eli sat beside her, not too close, but not far either. Just enough space for silence to speak the things neither dared name.
When I was little, I used to dream of living in a bakery, waking up every morning to the smell of butter, cinnamon, and coffee. But then I grew up and started waking up to bills, deadlines, and a mute version of my dream.
So now you're running.
No, I'm stopping.
Sometimes stopping is the only way to still see the road.
The rain thickened. A bolt of lightning split the sky, followed by a low, rolling rumble. June shivered, and Eli shrugged off his flannel shirt and draped it over her shoulders. She didn't resist. Her hands clutched the fabric warm, smelling of pine, grease, and something unmistakably Eli.
You always say things that make it easier to breathe.
And you always talk like if you don't, your heart might burst.
Because I've held too much in for too long.
She looked up at him this time longer, deeper. And Eli saw it, the exhaustion behind the lipstick, behind the sharp wit, a weariness that had taken root before he ever met her. He didn't touch her, didn't speak. He reached for the pocket radio in his backpack and clicked it on. A grainy old tune rose through the rain, Louis Armstrong's deep, warm voice. What a wonderful world. June closed her eyes. Her lips moved with the lyrics. When she opened them, they shimmered.
This song played at my sister's wedding. She got divorced 3 months later.
But the song is still beautiful.
You always see the good in things.
No, but I've learned not to drown in the bad.
Wind swept past, slanting rain into their faces. June leaned in, resting gently against Eli's shoulder. He didn't move, as if afraid she might vanish like mist if he did.
If there's a place where time stops and no one has to pay for what they love, I think it looks like this.
I think it is this.
They sat still, letting the rain encircle them, a world within a world, where only music shared warmth and the quiet storm on a tin roof existed. Then June looked up, her hand brushing Eli's cheek, a light touch, as if to confirm he was real, that this wasn't just a passing dream. But she didn't kiss him. She only said softly,
Thank you for not asking me anything.
Some answers only come when we stop looking.
A little later, the rain began to thin, the sky remained overcast, but a narrow strip of light peeked through the pines. June stood, shook off her dress, and tugged Eli to his feet.
Come on, if I stay here any longer, I'll start thinking I'm in a movie.
You don't want that.
I want something real, even if it hurts.
They walked back toward the dock, rainwater puddling on the dirt path. June jumped over them like a child. Eli watched her so free, so unafraid of stumbling, and he knew the rain had changed something inside them both. Neither said it, but the rain knew. At night, the town of Carolina felt like a single note drifting through a long song. Narrow streets were lit by string lights hanging from lampposts to porch eaves, casting a soft golden glow like old memories. The sea breeze had gentled, weaving through wooden walls, carrying scents of salt, fried seafood, and something else type that had fallen asleep. The bar was called Sparrow's Nest, a 2-story wooden house tucked behind a mechanic shop, known for its straight-pour bourbon, live music, and reckless Friday nights. Eli wasn't the type to go there, crowds weren't his thing, but tonight, when June smiled and asked,
Is there anywhere in town that still plays live music?
he brought her there. They walked in around 8 p.m., just as the band was playing a slow cover of Crazy, the singer's husky voice echoing like autumn nights and nearly empty glasses. June wore a deep blue dress, her hair loose like summer clouds. Eli had on a rolled-up white shirt and faded jeans, cleaner than usual, but still carrying the look of a man familiar with motor oil and sunlight. They sat by the window, where they could see the ocean twinkling with the distant lights of fishing boats. June ordered bourbon on the rocks. Eli got lemonade.
Didn't peg you for a lemonade guy at a bar.
Didn't peg you for the kind to pick me over a city?
She laughed, swelling her glass like weighing something far beyond tonight.
I haven't picked anything. I'm just passing through.
The band shifted into a softer tune, all piano and hush, somewhere. A laugh cracked above clinking glasses. June tilted her head, set her drink down.
You dance.
No.
Can't or won't.
Both, to me. Dancing's just a way to get stepped on.
Then let me step. I'm light.
Without waiting for protest, June stood and pulled him onto the floor. Eli wasn't used to dim lights, applause, or the feeling of his hand wrapped in hers, a woman looking at him like the world had gone still. They stood under the low string lights, the wood floor worn smooth beneath their feet. A few regulars looked their way, but June only saw Eli.
Don't worry about the steps. Just move to the rhythm of your heart.
And they began. Slow steps. Eli's hand at her backskin meeting fabric for the first time. June looked up at him, close enough he could hear her breathe, feel the warmth in the spaces between them. The music kept flowing. They turned slowly, quietly, as if the noise of the world had stayed outside. After a while, June rested her head on his shoulder, whispering,
Do you think someone can fall for someone else in just a few days?
I think some people wait a lifetime for just a few days like this.
June didn't reply. Her hand tightened on his shoulder like holding on to something dissolving in the air.
This scares me.
Why?
Because if this is real, then nothing after it will ever feel like enough.
Eli stopped moving. He pressed his forehead to hers and closed his eyes.
I'm scared too, but I'd rather fear something real than live calmly with something fake.
They stood like that, no longer dancing, just holding each other as the slow song faded. Applause broke out, but they didn't move until June whispered.
Let's go.
Eli didn't ask why. They left hand in hand, walking through the town night as if time had forgotten how to move. The wind still blew, the sea still hummed, and somewhere, Louis Armstrong was playing in another bar. They returned to the boatyard, lit only by the soft glow through the workshop window. June climbed onto the bow of June's song, legs crossed, eyes distant.
Will you remember me?
I've never forgotten someone who made me laugh on a day I felt empty.
Then don't forget tonight.
There's no other night but tonight.
She leaned over and kissed his cheek light as the first ocean breeze of summer. No promises, no binds. But something had taken root in both their hearts. And when June walked away without looking back, Eli stood there a long time, his hand still warm from her touch. But inside him, something strange had stirred the quiet fear that this, however beautiful, would not last. Summer sun rose early and bold over Carolina, pouring gold onto the low wooden rooftops, making the entire town shimmer in a warm, honey-colored light, the rattle of kids on bikes, wind chimes tinkling from the corner ice cream shop, and the steady thud of a hammer from the boatyard all came together as the soundtrack of a perfect morning. Eli was kneeling by the boat, carefully painting fresh white lines along the trim when June walked up. She wore his old shirt, sleeves rolled high, hair tied back, carrying 2 glasses of iced tea filled with mint and clinking ice cubes.
I can't believe I'm up at 6 a.m, painting a boat.
I can't believe you're still wearing my shirt from last night.
Because it's comfortable, and it smells like you.
Eli smiled, took the tea, sipped, then handed her a paintbrush. June wrinkled her nose.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Just follow the edge. Don't overthink. It'll be fine.
That sounds more like life advice than painting tips.
Maybe because painting a boat's a lot like life if you worry about every smudge. You'll never start.
They worked side by side under the sun. June was clumsy at first, her hands sticky with paint, lines crooked. Blowing on the spots like that might fix them. Eli watched, not laughing aloud, but with a look in his eyes like something in him had opened wide. When they grew tired, they laid out on the sand behind the workshop. June faced the sky, arms behind her head, eyes half closed.
If I said I could live like this forever, would you believe me?
I'd believe you, but I doubt you'd survive without internet.
I'm emotionally detoxing and unplugging from Wi-Fi.
Do you think things happen for a reason?
I used to. Now I think sometimes the only reason anything matters is because you meet the right person at the wrong time.
The breeze swept in from the ocean, waves murmuring in the distance. June rolled over to face Eli, head resting on her hand, eyes bright with mischief and something else.
Hey, Eli,
Yeah.
you ever think if I didn't leave at the end of summer, where this might go?
I don't need to think. I just want to live each day we've got right.
But what if...
June.
He stopped her, gently. His eyes were serious, but warm as sunlight.
If you keep thinking about the ending, you'll miss what's happening right now.
I'm just scared.
I'm scared too.
A silence followed, not heavy, just deep. That evening, June made dinner in the tiny kitchen behind the shop. She wrestled with a pan of fish, hands smelling like garlic and onions, while Eli quietly washed vegetables behind her. Music drifted from the radio, "Fly Me to the Moon," and the hanging light cast their shadows across the wall.
You're standing too close. It's making me nervous.
I thought you liked being watched.
Not when I'm trying not to burn dinner.
He chuckled, leaned in closer, whispered near her ear.
You're not going to burn anything. I believe in you.
June's hand trembled just a little. The fish didn't burn. But something inside her caught fire. After dinner, they sat on the dock, legs dangling over the edge. The moon climbed high, and the water shimmered silver.
Eli, I've never felt like this.
Like what?
Like no matter what I say or do, you won't walk away.
I'm not going anywhere.
But what if I'm the one who has to go?
Eli said nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly,
I don't hold anyone back. But if someone wants to stay, I'll do everything to make sure they know they're not lost.
June didn't reply. She just rested her head on his shoulder. And in that moment, no more questions needed answering. The bar sat tucked behind the old train station where locomotives once passed daily before the rail line was shut down. Now it was just a frame of sea-worn grey wood. Windows thrown open and soft light flickering from paper lanterns hung unevenly across the ceiling. Inside, soft swing music from the 1950s played, layered with clinking glasses, laughter, and the creak of wooden floors under the missteps of aging couples still dancing like the world hadn't changed. Eli held the door open for June. She paused at the threshold, her eyes scanning the room like a child stepping into a museum of memory.
This place, it's like they keep time in mason jars here.
You like it?
I love it.
They picked a table against the wall, where the golden lights made June's skin glow like warm honey. She shook out her hair, took a sip of a coral-pink cocktail, and looked at Eli with a teasing glint.
I might just move here, buy a tiny house and get a dog, and come here every night for jazz.
And leave everything in Boston.
There's nothing there worth going back for.
Eli almost asked something, but the way her eyes caught the lantern light too bright, too tender, made him stop. A live band began to play, a jazzy rhythm that made your foot tap without permission. June grabbed his hand.
Come on, no one's watching. Everyone's busy being themselves.
They stepped onto the floor, Not quite dancing, just moving freely, naturally, like their bodies understood the music even when words failed. June spun once, her hair flying like sea spray. Eli didn't laugh out loud, but his smile was so genuine it lit up the room a few degrees warmer.
You're a better dancer than I expected.
I'm just following my heartbeat, like you said.
See, I'm right most of the time.
They laughed. Then, in the high point of the song, June coughed, a dry, sharp cough, brief but sudden. She covered her mouth, her face slightly pale. Eli stopped immediately, his hand still at her back.
You okay?
I'm fine. Maybe the drink's stronger than I thought.
Do you want to leave?
No, I want to stay. Please, don't make this a thing.
Eli didn't press, but something flickered in his eyes like the first hairline crack on glass. When the music ended, they returned to their table. June laughed louder, talked more as if trying to muffle something rising quietly inside her chest. Eli, meanwhile, grew quieter than usual. On the drive back, June leaned her head against the car window, drawing circles in the fog on the glass with her fingertip.
Tonight is one of those nights I wish I could keep forever.
Then don't let it go.
But some things, the tighter you hold them, the quicker they slip away.
The truck pulled up in front of the workshop porch. Eli didn't speak. He got out first, opened the door for her. June stepped down, a little unsteady. He reached out to help, but she held up her hand, smiled faintly.
I'm not that fragile.
They stood on the porch, the moon casting their shadows long against the wooden siding. Eli turned to her, and for the first time, his voice dropped low, almost too soft to hear.
If one day you disappear from this place without a word, I'll search every street for you.
June looked at him, her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell.
You won't have to. I'll leave a clear enough trail.
She turned and walked inside. But Eli's heart stayed there out in the dark, listening to the faint cough echo behind the half-closed door. Night fell over Carolina like a thick blanket, muffling every sound. The ocean was quieter than usual, as if even the sea was holding its breath. On a stretch of smooth sand nestled between two rocky bluffs, Eli laid out an old wool blanket, the same one he used for night fishing, and placed a small oil lantern in the center, its flickering flame like a heartbeat unsure of itself. June sat first, drawing her legs close, letting handfuls of sand sift slowly through her fingers. She wore Eli's denim jacket, a smoky grey summer dress beneath it, her hair loosely pinned with strands dancing in the breeze, in the soft lantern light. Her face was breathtaking, but to Eli, it wasn't her features that were beautiful. It was her silence. He sat beside her, not too close, but close enough that their shoulders brushed gently when the wind shifted.
For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. They just listened. To waves, to sand, to themselves.
I used to imagine if I ever had to leave this life behind, I'd want it to be somewhere like this. Not in a hospital. Not with white walls, white sheets, the smell of bleach. But here the sea, the wind, and someone I trust.
Eli turned to her, startled.
Don't say that.
'Cause it scares you.
Because I'm still living.
June smiled. Soft, quiet. Then she coughed a dry, sudden cough, like something deep inside her chest was trying to escape. She turned away, covering her mouth.
June.
She held up her hand, a small gesture, not now. After a moment, she exhaled, steadying herself, then looked back at him, but didn't meet his eyes.
Do you want to know?
If you're ready to tell me.
June gazed out at the sea, her eyes shimmering but dry. Her words came slowly, as if pulled from the deepest part of her.
A year ago, I went to the doctor for a persistent stomach pain. They found a tumor, Rare, slow to grow. No clear symptoms, but enough to kill eventually.
Eli clenched his hands, not in shock, but because his heart was fracturing with every word.
I only told my mom and my grandma. Then she passed, and I ran out of patience with meds, with being strong. I hated counting days.
So you came here to...
To not be a patient, to have one summer where I lived, not pitied, not pushed to hope.
Eli nodded slowly, but the winter night carried a saltier sting. He leaned toward her, his voice low like a vow no one else could hear.
You should have told me sooner.
Why?
Because I don't want to love someone I can't keep.
June froze, her eyes widened. She stared at Eli like she'd never expected him to use that word love.
Aren't you afraid
Of what?
that this is just a sad movie scene? That the ending's already written and we're just playing our parts?
I'm not acting, and I don't need an ending to live the present.
June looked up at him. Their eyes met two opposing tides colliding, tangled but slowly becoming one. She reached out, touched his cheek. She said nothing, just held the moment long enough for Eli to wish he could freeze it forever.
I don't want to hurt you.
I don't need safe. I need real.
June rested her head on his shoulder. Eli wrapped his arms around her, not because it was cold, but because not holding her was suddenly unbearable. The moon was high now. Waves still lapped the shore. Eli kissed her hair so softly, even he wasn't sure if it really happened or just a breath of longing. And they sat like that between earth and sky, between truth and the inevitable. No more promises, because in that moment every second together was already a vow unspoken. They camped on a secluded stretch of sand, tucked behind low coastal trees. No one else was there, only them, and the sounds of wind brushing the tent walls, waves whispering salt-stained fairy tales in the dark. By the time Eli finished setting up the tent, the sky had turned violet. June spread out a blanket, placed a small flashlight in the center, 2 mugs of hot tea steeped from paper bags, and an old voice recorder Eli had pulled from the workshop.
You always keep this.
It was my dad's. He used it to record me reading poems when I was a kid.
So what do you record now?
Everything I don't have the guts to say out loud.
June laughed, then picked up the recorder like it was a newly unearthed treasure. She pressed the red button.
This is June, sitting beside a man named Eli, a boat fixer, a lemonade drinker at dive bars, and someone who looks at me like I'm the most real thing in his life. If you're hearing this, maybe I'm gone, or maybe I just overslept. Either way, thank you for letting me live the way I always wished I could.
She clicked it off and handed it to him. Eli looked at her, quiet. Then he pressed record.
I'm Eli. I spent 30 years not believing in fate until a girl in a yellow dress walked into my boat shop like she'd belonged there before I was even born. If this voice is still echoing, know this, I regret nothing. Whatever the ending, I chose the right person to begin with.
They leaned into each other, the recorder resting between them, a silent witness to the deepening night. The moon hung low, casting a silver outline around the strands of June's hair.
Eli, if you ever listen to this again, play it here, on this beach, and not alone.
I won't be alone.
Promise.
I don't make promises I can't keep, but I'll try to live long enough to remember it all.
She nodded, eyes brimming but still smiling.
I wrote you something else. Not in voice. In words.
She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, tucked inside a small notebook, handed it to him.
Don't open it now. Only if you can't hear me anymore.
Eli clutched the paper but didn't ask. He didn't want to weigh the night down, not while she was resting her head on his chest, her breathing light as sand shifting. After a while, June whispered barely more than breath.
Do you think there's a place where people get to relive the moments they lost?
There is, in the memories of the ones who stay.
June closed her eyes. Eli looked at her, his gaze no longer hiding anything. He leaned down, placed a kiss on her forehead, long, warm, and steady. Above them, a shooting star sliced a thin light across the sky. June opened her eyes and whispered,
Make a wish.
I don't need to. What I want is here.
That night, they fell asleep side by side in the tent, beneath a sky full of stars. No more words, no fear, no promises, only something permanent carved into their hearts like the voice recordings, the unread note, and the scent of June's hair in the ocean wind. Morning arrived early on the Carolina coast, laying soft gold across the white sand and the lush green canopy behind the beach. The waves kept a steady rhythm, lulling and low, while gulls flew low above the shoreline, their long cries slicing the quiet, a reminder that a new day had begun. Eli woke first. He lay still for a while, not from sleepiness, but because he didn't want to leave that moment. Next to him, June was still sleeping, her face turned toward the light. Brows slightly furrowed, lips parted. Her breath so quiet it felt like reaming. She looked thinner now, Eli noticed. Her collarbones stood out more sharply. Her fingers were lean, her skin nearly translucent in the pale morning light. Eli propped himself up, gently pulled the blanket higher over her shoulder, then stepped out of the tent. He walked to the water's edge, bent down to pick up an intact seashell, and stood silently, staring out at the ocean for a long time. When he returned, June was awake. She sat against the tent, holding the cup of tea he'd left for her. There was something different in her eyes, alert, peaceful, and very tired.
I dreamed that you and I lived in a tiny cabin by the bay. You fixed boats. I grew wild daisies.
Sounds like something we could still do.
No, Eli, I dreamed it because I know it won't be real.
Eli moved closer, sat beside her. He gently took her hand in his. June didn't pull away. She looked at him longer than usual.
Do you know why I never said I love you?
Because you were afraid.
Because I knew if I said it, you'd have no way out.
Eli didn't reply right away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded paper she had given him days before, placed it in her hand.
I haven't opened it, but if you want, we can read it together.
June shook her head, smiling faintly.
No, that's for later. Not today. Today, there's still light.
She rested her head on his shoulder, eyes closed. Her hand still clutched his, a small anchor in the middle of a wide sea.
I'm stopping treatment next week. It's not helping anymore. The doctors say maybe a few months, maybe less.
Eli's heart clenched, but he didn't let go. He raised his other hand to gently stroke her hair, then kissed the top of her head.
I'll be here, however far you draw the map.
I don't need you to be here until the end. I just need you here for every day.
A stronger gust of wind rattled the tent walls. June exhaled, her voice spilling out like a cup too full.
Maybe, I was wrong to come here. What if I made you love me more than you could carry?
Then I was wrong to let myself love you. But if I had to choose again, I'd still make the same mistake twice.
June smiled, but her eyes were red. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a simple red thread bracelet, tied with a single loose knot.
I made this last night. Not to keep you, but to remind you somewhere. Someone once believed in love. Just because of you.
She tied the bracelet around Eli's wrist. He didn't stop her, didn't speak, just watched her small hands move like a quiet ritual. Afterward, they packed up the camp, and headed back to town. June sat in the passenger seat, her head leaning against the window. Neither of them spoke the entire drive. But in Eli's mind, one sentence played on repeat, like waves breaking again and again. I just need you here for every day, every Saturday. The small coastal town of Carolina came alive with a local market. Residents brought fresh produce, fruit jams, baked goods, and handmade crafts, lining both sides of the main road. Fabric banners fluttered in the breeze. Kids darted around the ice cream cart, and grown-ups gathered under awnings chatting about the coming fishing season. That day, the weather was perfect. June wore a simple white dress, hair tied low, and carried a straw basket filled with eggs, apples, and a bunch of rosemary she loved. Eli walked beside her, sipping coffee, pausing now and then to greet familiar faces. She stopped by Mary's baked goods stall, an elderly woman who always slipped an extra cookie into the bag of anyone who smiled sincerely. Eli waited just outside, arms crossed, watching her with a quiet warmth. And then it happened all in an instant. June reached for a pastry on the shelf, but her hand froze mid-air. She staggered slightly. The basket slipped from her grasp and tumbled, eggs cracking open on the pavement. She took one step back, lips parted, eyes losing focus, and collapsed like a tree felled at the root. A scream pierced the market. Cookies scattered. People rushed over.
Call an ambulance. Hurry.
Eli dropped his coffee, bolted to her. He knelt beside June, cradled her head in his hands. She didn't stir. Her skin was pale, lips almost colorless.
June, look at me, June.
No response, only wind and the sound of Eli's heart crashing in his chest. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes, the longest of Eli's life. He rode with her in the back, his hand never leaving hers, now turning cold. Every bump in the road made him grip tighter. In his mind played a loop, June laughing by the ocean, hair flying, and then that image shattered, like glass. The hospital was small, white, and quiet. Eli paced outside the ER, his palms still faintly scented with rosemary from the spilled basket. His eyes stayed dry, but his throat was blocked with something heavy and silent. The doctor emerged after an hour. His eyes said enough.
Mild blood loss, low blood pressure, not critical right now, but...
He hesitated.
She didn't tell anyone.
About the illness?
End-stage soft tissue cancer, it's spread to her lungs. She declined chemotherapy.
Eli leaned against the wall. The world tilted sideways. Every half-said sentence from June now assembled into a silent, painful map. He entered her room. June lay in a white bed, eyes closed, an ivy in her arm. She looked like a flower placed in the wrong season, still beautiful, but not in the right time. When she opened her eyes, Eli was there, saying nothing, just watching.
I'm sorry.
Her voice was thin like wind at day's end.
Don't be
I didn't want you to see me like this.
like this. You're still here. You're still breathing. You're still looking at me.
June shut her eyes again. A tear slipped from the corner.
I hate hospitals.
I know, but you need a few days here to regain strength.
Just a few. Promise you won't let them keep me.
Eli didn't answer, because he didn't know what he could still hold on to. He held her hand through the night, never slept, listening to the monitor beep steadily like his heartbeat, fragile and bracing for a fall. The next morning, June woke with a faint flush on her cheeks. She whispered,
I feel like I'm fading. Every time I open my eyes, the world is paler.
Then I'll be the color, bright enough to hold you here.
Don't love me more.
Too late.
June smiled, weak but real.
if one morning I don't wake up. Read the letter I gave you.
No.
Promise me.
Eli lowered his head, resting his forehead on her hand. For the first time, he cried, quietly, no sobs, just salt drawn from the deepest part of him.
I promise, but you'll have to make me wait a long, long time.
In the White Room, outside the windows, light began to fill the sky, but inside, two people held on to each other as if all the light in the world had decided to begin from the space between their hands. That morning, sunlight spilled gently after a long night of rain. The wind blew inland from the sea, carrying the scent of salt and the cries of early birds. In hospital bed, number the 12th of June woke beneath soft light slanting through white curtains. She sat up slowly, her body no longer feeling entirely her own, but her mind was clear. She wrote a small note, "Thank you for trying, but now I want to live." Signed with just one word. June? Eli waited at the hospital gate, hands in his coat pockets, leaning against his old pickup parked by the curb. In the truck bed, everything was ready, a thin mattress, a few pillows, bags of food, hot tea in a flask, the old voice recorder, and a hand-woven straw basket June used for market days.
Every detail simple, but prepared with the care of someone who knew exactly what she needed. June stepped out, thinner than days before, but her eyes shone strangely bright. She wore the oversized grey hoodie Eli had lent her the night of their first beach walk. In the sunlight, she squinted at him and smiled tired, but true.
I feel like I just broke out of prison. Need a place to hide.
If you do, I know some old fishing cellars where they used to stash bootleg liquor.
What's the reward for fugitives?
Freedom. And a few hours without your name on a heart monitor.
They didn't drive home. They didn't go to the workshop. Eli turned down a dirt path to the south dock, a quiet place where the sea stretched wide like an open arm. June's song bobbed gently in the morning light, its reddish wood gleaming. Eli secured the boat, then helped June aboard with both hands, as if she were the most delicate thing he'd ever held. June sat at the bow, facing the water, her fingers brushing the freshly painted trim. Wind tugged at her sleeves, her loose hair catching sunlight like silver threads.
I remember this place, but today it feels different.
How so?
Like it knows that this time we're not coming back the same.
Eli untied the rope, started the engine. It rumbled softly. The boat eased away from the dock, gliding through pale green water like glass. Each wave that touched the hull sounded like a faraway whisper. They didn't speak at first. The wind filled June's hoodie. Her face was pale, but her gaze was calm. Eli drove, glancing at her now and then, every movement quiet as if not to tear the moment. Once they reached open water where the shoreline disappeared, Eli cut the engine. Only wind, waves, and heartbeat remained.
This is where I want to die. Not because I'm sad, but because it's peaceful.
You're not dying. You're living. Right here. Right now.
June nodded, leaning her head against the side. Wind brushed her cheek. She reached into the basket and pulled out the old voice recorder. Scratched, black, familiar. Eli handed her the backup battery. She clicked it in and pressed record.
This is June on a day I can't remember the date, but I remember the sun, the breeze, and the man I love beside me. If you're hearing this, I'm probably not here anymore. Don't cry. I never liked sobs. Smile, because at least I gotta live truthfully, with myself, and with you.
She stopped the recording and handed it to Eli.
What do you want me to say?
Whatever is most real in your heart. No edits.
Eli looked at her for a long moment, then pressed the red button.
I'm Eli, a man who never believed a single summer could change everything, until you walked into my boat shop holding a book upside down and delivering a sarcastic line like it was scripture. You made me laugh. You made me hurt. You made me live. If tomorrow I can't hold your hand anymore, this recording will be your hand. Forever.
June placed her hand over his, her eyes brimmed.
I'm scared, Eli.
Me too.
But I don't regret a thing.
Neither do I.
They sat like that until the sun dipped west. The light turned to honey. The sea shimmered like someone had spilled 1,000,000 gold coins. June laid her head on Eli's lap, wrapping her arms around his waist.
If I don't wake up one morning, don't look for me. I'll be here, in the wind, in the water, in the song you play every night.
Eli leaned down, kissed her hair.
I won't play the recording, because your voice still echoes inside me.
Darkness came slowly, though the boat drifted gently, the wind was soft, the water steady, and in the middle of all that vastness, a man sat keeping watch over the sleep of the woman he loved, holding on to the last light of a lantern that knew it would soon go out. Rain began to fall as they returned to town. Not the sudden kind that rushes in with summer, but the quiet, steady rain of late August, not harsh, but seeping into everything. Eli carried June from the boat to the workshop. She no longer had the strength to walk far, but she still gripped his hand tightly as if that mattered more than balance. Inside the small wooden room behind the shop, he moved the armchair closer to the window, the spot June liked for music, and watching the rain. She sat down and pulled from her basket a small sky-blue notebook worn soft at the corners.
I need to write a few things. Not much. Just some things that need to leave me, but not be lost.
Do you want me here?
I want you not to read them while I can still look at you.
Eli nodded. He stepped out, leaving the door slightly ajar. Inside, only the sound of pen on paper and rain tapping the tin roof filled the room. June wrote slowly, each letter curved and gentle, each letter a short song to her mother who taught her that women can choose quiet without losing strength, to her grandmother who brought her back to the town that summer, though she wasn't alive to welcome her return, and finally, to Eli. She wrote his name on the envelope with black ink, no date, just a single dot in the bottom corner. She placed it in the desk drawer, locked it, and exhaled, as if letting go of the last thing she could still hold. That afternoon, Eli returned with a cup of hot tea and a slice of buttered bread. June smiled as he stepped in.
I just finished my last book. No one will read it, but that's okay. I only need you to keep it.
Eli didn't ask, didn't speak. He handed her the tea, pulled up a chair, sat close. His hand met hers like a quiet answer. The rain continued into the night. June drifted off as evening deepened. Eli tucked a blanket over her, placed the old voice recorder on the table, and sat on the floor, leaning against the chair. He didn't know when he fell asleep. The next morning, when he woke, June was still asleep, breathing slow, even, but fainter. While she rested, he tidied the room. When he opened the desk drawer to return a fallen book, he found the letter, white paper, her handwriting. His name, nothing more needed. He didn't open it right away. He took it out to the porch, sat in the chair. The rain had just stopped. The earth was still damp, trees dripping, the air thick with the smell of wet soil. Eli opened the letter. The words struck his heart like waves against the hull of a boat.
Eli, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer beside you this morning, or the next, or any that follow. I'm sorry not for leaving, but for not being able to stay longer. I borrowed this summer to live one last time. And you were the gift I never dared ask for. You gave me real laughter, eyes without judgment, and silences that never asked for anything. I loved you early, deeply, gently. So gently it hurt to even breathe. Don't keep me locked in your dreams. Keep living. Go to the places we didn't reach. Dance to the songs we never got to hear. And if one day you forget the smell of my hair, the sound of my laugh, don't be angry, because memories aren't made to last forever. They're made to remind us we once lived fully. Forever not by time, but by feeling. June.
Eli folded the letter. His eyes stayed dry, but not his heart. He didn't speak, didn't shout, didn't cry out. He just sat there, inside a new world, one where June would no longer step through the door each morning. But her voice would always be somewhere in the wind. When Eli stepped into the room, June was already seated by the window. Her shadow, cast by moonlight, lay faint against the wall, as thin as a page left too long in the sun. She didn't turn when she heard his footsteps. She only spoke, as if to the wind.
Tonight, I don't want to sleep under a roof.
Eli stood behind her. In the dim light, he could see just how thin her shoulders had become. But her voice, that was what had kept him from the beginning, what made him understand loving, wasn't about holding on, but knowing when to let go.
You want to go to the sea.
One last time. Not to go anywhere. Just to be where everything began.
He nodded, though she couldn't see. And he knew this was the last thing he could do for her, not to save her, not to prolong anything, but simply to take her back to where she belonged. They left the workshop just before midnight. No lights, no goodbyes. The whole town was asleep, as if quietly agreeing some journeys need no send-off, only presence. The sea breeze was gentle, not cold, just enough to lift June's shirt hem and sweep her hair behind her shoulders. Eli helped her down to the boat, one careful step at a time, like he was guiding the final notes of a song he never wanted to end. June's song slipped away from the dock like a soul that had been waiting. The wood creaked beneath them. Waves lapped softly. The night was dark, but not frightening, because inside the boat there was light from a small oil lamp beside June. And from Eli's eyes, now free of any hiding, they said nothing as they drifted. She lay on the old wool blanket, her head on a pillow, her body draped in half the shirt Eli had worn the day they met. Her hand clasped his, eyes half shut, but a faint smile still on her lips.
Play something.
Eli picked up the recorder. He didn't choose a song. He simply pressed play. And from the tiny speaker, Patsy Cline's voice filled the air, the first song, the old one, the one he still couldn't hear all the way through without thinking of her. June sighed, not from pain, but like someone who had finally set down a suitcase carried too far.
You know, living is such a hard way to love someone, because you're always afraid you're not enough, not at the right time, not in the right way.
Eli leaned down, kissed her hand softly.
You were enough, from the very first day.
I'm scared that after I'm gone, everything will vanish like morning mist.
No, you'll stay in everything I touch, like oars, like waves, like the salt in my skin.
June closed her eyes. No tears, but her voice trembled.
I don't hurt anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. I just wish.
Wish what?
For time, I just wish I had more of it.
Eli tightened his grip. Her hand was cold, light, like it was ready.
Don't hold me, but don't forget me. Don't forget someone once loved you with no reason, no condition. Just because you were you.
Eli pressed his forehead to hers. Their breaths merged, indistinguishable between the one staying and the one about to leave.
I love you, forever not in time, but in feeling.
June smiled. She didn't open her eyes again, but he knew she heard. She understood. The wind swept gently over the sea, like a caring hand stroking the waves. In the distance, the sky began to glow faintly. It wasn't clear whether it was moonlight or something else opening from another world. And then, without a sound, June released her final breath like a whisper sent into the dark. Eli sat there, still holding her hand. The wind moved through his hair. The sea was quiet. The boat drifted. But time had stopped. When the sun rose, Eli was still beside her. He hummed the old song softly. No tears, no wailing. Just a song for the one who had heard it last, and smiled as she slipped away. The late afternoon breeze slipped through the old wooden slats of the boat shop, creaking the window open a little wider. The sky was awash in quiet shades of orange, stretching down to the sea like wet paint. The surface of the ocean caught the fading light, still as if listening. Maggie sat in a wicker chair beside Eli. The golden light filtered over her shoulder, catching the shimmer in her eyes, tears not yet fallen. In her hands was her grandmother's embroidered handkerchief, the one she had once planned to use on her wedding day. Now it lay still, a quiet witness to a grief with no name, freshly shared.
So, you took her out to sea? Alone?
Eli didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the horizon, that blurred line where sea met sky. The wind blew inland from that very place, carrying salt and memory.
Not alone. She went with everything she ever left in me.
Maggie bowed her head. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she exhaled, like someone letting a stone drop from their chest.
Do you regret it?
Eli turned to her. His eyes no longer sorrowful, just deep, as if the water had settled to the bottom.
I used to fear regret, but June taught me if you've loved fully, there's nothing left to regret.
I've never loved someone enough to let them go.
Then maybe you've never truly loved.
It wasn't judgment, just truth, light as a blade drawn across soft skin. Maggie looked up. She saw Eli not just as a man who told her a story, but as someone who had revealed what she'd never had the courage to face. That real love doesn't bind, it frees.
I didn't walk away from my wedding because I didn't love him. I walked because I was afraid I'd lose myself. I thought love was something that made you disappear.
And what did you learn from this story?
That, if it's the right person, you don't disappear. You just expand.
Eli smiled, not wide, but warm like late autumn sun that still dries the clothes after rain.
Will you go back?
No. At least not yet. I think I need to go somewhere. Alone. To learn how to love without needing to be rescued first.
Eli stood and walked to June's song. He placed his hand on the boat's edge, a gesture so familiar it looked like touching something still breathing.
If you need to go somewhere, this boat still sails.
Maggie stepped closer. She ran her fingers along the wood grain.
Did she name it?
No, I did, after she left.
Do you think she knew?
I think so. She always knew more than she ever said.
The wind picked up. Maggie pulled her shawl tighter. But inside, she felt warm, not from sunlight, but because something small had kindled again in her. A fragile trust. A quiet message that love isn't about holding on, it's about the courage to lose. The next morning, sunlight arrived early, golden and clear, like honey swirled gently in a glass. The wind still carried the scent of the sea, but something had shifted. As if this small town had just said goodbye to something sacred, and now it was making space for something new to begin. Maggie packed her things into the trunk of the rental car, not much, just a backpack, a notebook, a few photos, and a handkerchief embroidered with roses, passed down from her grandmother. In her jacket pocket, she tucked away the old voice recorder. Eli had given it to her at sunrise, saying only,
Some things aren't meant to be kept just for yourself. You'll know when to play it.
Maggie stood outside the boat shop, looking back one last time. Eli was wiping down the bow of the boat, like he did every morning. They didn't hug, no promises, just a nod, the kind exchange between two people who understand we meet not to hold on but to move forward.
Are you going to be okay?
I lived through a summer like that. Everything after is just another season.
I don't know where I'm going.
Then keep going until you no longer need to ask.
Maggie laughed softly. She opened the car door, slid into the driver's seat. Eli stepped back, hands on hips, squinting toward her like a father seeing his daughter off to college. The car rolled slowly out of the dock road in the rearview mirror. Maggie watched Eli grow smaller, then disappear into the sunlight. She didn't cry, but something tightened, not from parting, but from the quiet certainty that, for the first time, she was headed in the right direction. Along the coastal highway, wind swept against the windows. Maggie turned on the recorder, static hummed. Then June's voice, steady, warm, unafraid, filled the car.
If someone's hearing this, then hello. I'm the girl who lived one final summer and loved like I'd never been bound. If you're lost, don't be afraid. Every right path begins where someone once felt completely wrong.
Maggie pulled over to the shoulder. The sea breeze spilled through the open window. She rested her forehead on the steering wheel, eyes closed, not from exhaustion, but because those words weren't a goodbye, they were a map. A few minutes later, she opened her eyes and started the engine. This time, she didn't need GPS, didn't need a destination, only a heart quiet enough to start listening. And so she drove, not looking for love, not avoiding it, but so that one day, if love knocked, she could open the door without ever needing to look back. It was late when Maggie pulled into a small southern town. She'd been driving all day, no destination, no plan, just letting the wind rush through the windows, lulling her mind into what people call the quiet after the storm. She picked a roadside motel when she saw a flickering yellow light through the pines. A single room, small bed, old floral curtains on the window, the TV stayed off. She sat in a wooden chair by the desk, opened the window wide so the night air could flow in heavy with earth, wet flowers, and the soft hum of crickets somewhere far off. On the desk, her travel-worn notebook, a fountain pen, and a blank envelope. Maggie stared at the empty page for a long time before writing, for the first time in her life. She was writing a letter, not because someone expected it, not out of politeness, not to explain, but to be honest. She wrote the first name, Daniel, slowly, carefully, like calling out a part of herself she'd left behind. She didn't know where he was, wasn't sure he'd ever open the letter. But she knew what she was about to write wasn't something she owed him. It was something she owed herself.
Daniel, I don't know if you'll ever read this letter. I'm not writing it to apologize or hoping you'll come back. I'm writing it because, finally, I found my own voice. And for the first time, I want to let it speak. Not for anyone else. Just for me. I once thought I loved you. Maybe I still do. But I confused love with safety, with expectation, with doing everything by the plan. And then, right before walking down that aisle, I realized I had never truly lived for myself. After that day, I met someone. No, you don't know him. And I won't say much. But he once loved someone in a way I'd never even dreamed of. He loved without needing to keep. Loved without needing to win. Loved and still let her go free. And I realized love isn't where you disappear. It's where you finally find yourself. I spent too long trying to be a good wife-to-be, a proper daughter-in-law, a woman who never caused trouble, and somewhere in all those roles, I lost Maggie. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't know if I deserve it. I only hope that if one day you meet someone who makes you feel peace, not because she's perfect, but because she dares to be real, you won't turn away. Because she might be the one who deserves the best of you. Maggie.
When she finished writing, Maggie set down the pen and exhaled soft, like letting go of a suitcase that had been too heavy for years. She folded the letter and slipped it into the envelope. No address, no stamp, just left it there, a symbol of truth, finally spoken, with no need for reply. The night passed slowly. Maggie lay in bed, eyes open, watching the ceiling spin gently in the lamplight. But for the first time in years, her mind wasn't replaying conversations. No regrets, no ache. And the next morning, as she left, she placed the letter in the drawer beneath the motel Bible, not to hide, but so that someone might find it and understand some words need to be written, even if no one ever reads them. The sky slipped into dusk slowly. The sun retreated behind the old pine ridge, leaving behind streaks of burnt orange that faded like the last lines of a story. A gentle sea breeze rolled in, brushed past the breakwater, through the woodshop, and finally caressed the hull of a lone boat docked at the far end of the pier, June's song. Eli walked down the pier, each step creaking on the planks like echoes of a memory. In his hand, he held a black, old cassette recorder, the one he hadn't dared to play in all these years. Not because he forgot, because he feared that her voice would shatter him after all this time spent holding himself together. He placed the recorder on the boat's railing and sat down on the weathered bench. His calloused hands still remembered the feel of the smaller one they once held. The waves lapped gently against the wooden hull. Somewhere, a seagull cried out, and the sky turned to deep indigo. He pressed play. A hiss came first, then June's voice, low, warm, with a slight rasp at the end of each phrase, as if she were sitting just half a step away.
Eli, if you're hearing this, it means you kept your promise. Thank you for not reading the letter when I could still see you. And thank you for loving me the right way. No chains, no pressure, no regrets. I used to think death was the end. Turns out, it's just a door. And this voice, it's how I leave you the key. You gave me a full summer. No miracles, no illusions, just real. And from that real, I took enough to cross over without fear. If someone's with you when you play this, tell them love isn't something we earn. It's something we risk losing once in a lifetime, and still choose to believe in again. If you're alone, then I'm here, in the wind, in the water, in every sail you raise each morning. Don't turn it off just yet. I have a song for you.
And then she sang. No music, no editing, just her voice slightly offbeat, but soft as morning dew on grass.
I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places.
Eli bowed his head. His hand clutched the edge of the boat, and for the first time in forever he cried. Not loudly, not broken, just tears falling onto his old shirt, mixing with the scent of wood, salt and memories that never dried. When the song ended, he didn't turn the recorder off. He let it sit there, replaying every soft phrase, every pause, as if even the silence was part of what she'd left behind. The moon rose high, casting his shadow over the sea, but something had lifted inside him, like an anchor finally dropped, like a heart releasing what it had held too long. He looked up and whispered,
You were right. You never really left.
and as he stepped off the boat, the recorder still played its final, breath-like note.
If someone hears me, love someone hard enough that they choose to live even without you.
Late autumn in Carolina wore a wistful shade of gold. Leaves drifted down gently like old whispers from a summer long gone. The sea breeze had softened, not fierce anymore. Just a quiet reminder some places stay the same, holding on to what no one else could. Maggie drove into town just past 9. On the passenger seat sat a thicker journal, a slip of paper with Eli's boat shop address, and an old tape recorder she'd carried the whole way. No music, no drama, just a longing to see someone, not to ask for directions, but to say, "I'm back," after going far enough. The boat shop still stood there, tucked beside the water like a witness that never aged. Maggie stepped out of the car and stood still for a long while, looking at the faded wooden door, the wall lined with tools, and the faint rhythm of a hammer echoing from somewhere inside. When she walked in, Eli was at the bench, sanding a paddle. He looked older than before, hair more silver, hands slightly trembling. But his eyes were the same, clear, steady, ready to listen. They looked at each other. No need for a hello, no hugs. Just a gaze of recognition, like a book being opened to the exact page it had last been closed on.
You look different.
I've been living.
Eli nodded, a brief smile brushing the corner of his lips like morning wind.
Sit down. The coffee's cold, but bitter enough to remember.
Maggie sat in the same chair she once did the day she showed up in a wedding dress, heels dusty, heart running from itself. Now she sat steady, hands clasped on the table.
I'm not here to ask more. I'm here to tell.
I'm listening.
She took out the recorder and placed it between them.
I recorded the journey. Not long. Not grand. But real. I went where I thought the end was. I met someone I didn't think I could open up to. I wrote. I cried. I failed. But every time I almost turned back was another step forward.
And
now I'm not afraid to love anymore.
Wind drifted through the window. The air carried salt. Maggie turned on the recorder, letting a short clip play her voice. Shaky, but clear.
If you ever thought you weren't enough for someone to come back to, know this. I came back not because I needed to be held, but because I'm strong enough now to stand beside you.
Eli said nothing. He looked out the window, where June's song still rested, still as a heartbeat that never stopped. Then he turned, eyes glistening not from pain, but from witnessing something rare that a love story might end, but love itself could begin again in someone new.
you staying?
I don't know. But this time, I'm not running.
Later, Maggie stepped onto the porch and looked out to the sea. Eli stood behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder like someone who once said goodbye, and for the first time welcomed someone home. The Carolina sun dipped westward, its light no longer harsh, but softened to gold, spilling gently over the faded wooden rooftops and still palm trees lining the shore. The water shimmered, not wild, not still, just breathing. Maggie stood at the edge of the dock, holding the old tape recorder Eli had given her. The breeze played with her neatly tied hair and lifted the light scarf at her neck. In the waning light, she didn't look like someone who had come back from running away, but someone who had weathered the storm and learned how to stand. Eli emerged from the shop, a worn paddle in hand, freshly sanded. His face bore the deep lines of time, but his eyes were calm like the sea after the waves have passed. They said nothing. Maggie smiled first. A smile no longer held back. Eli simply asked.
Feel like taking a ride?
Maggie nodded. That was enough. No plans, no reasons. No one asked where to. Because sometimes the destination isn't where you're headed, it's who you're with. They stepped on to June's song. The wood still smelled the same. The ropes still held tight. Familiar creaks echoed as Eli pushed the boat from the dock, just as he had many years ago. With a woman who taught him how to love without fear of loss. The wind skimmed the water, and the boat swayed as if in reply. Eli sat at the back, paddle gliding in steady rhythm. Maggie sat at the front, fingers trailing in the water, eyes on the horizon.
When I left Carolina, I didn't know if I'd ever come back. I was afraid that if I returned and found nothing here, my heart would break.
But you came back anyway.
Because someone once told me, the real things don't disappear. They just change shape and wait for us to be brave enough to recognize them.
The breeze picked up. The sun touched the horizon, stretching their shadows across the water, not overlapping, but parallel. A moment later, Maggie turned on the recorder. Her voice echoed gently across the open space.
If anyone out there fears loving again because they lost someone important, know this loss doesn't kill love. It only shows how real it once was.
She paused, then turned to Eli.
I don't think I loved Daniel the right way, but I think I learned how to love. From you, from her.
Eli didn't speak. He only nodded, and in that silence was something deeper than comfort. They sat there, letting the boat drift across the still water, neither of them rowing. The sun sank lower, the wind shifted, and in that moment there was no music, no fireworks, just two people, one who had lost, one who had run, sitting beside each other in peace. When Maggie stepped back onto the dock, she turned to look at the boat one last time.
Next time, I'll row.
Next time, the sky will be even better.
And they knew not every story needs to end in new love. Some endings only need presence honest, quiet, and enough to begin again. Someone once said losing someone is how we learn to love better. But sometimes losing someone is how we realize just how fully we once lived. Eli loved a woman named June, not with promises, not with rings, but by walking beside her to the very end, and then learning how to live on alone. No one taught him how. He just knew if you can't hold on to the one you love, then at least be the place they choose to return to one last time. Maggie didn't come to replace June. She came to listen. And in the silence Eli had kept for years, she found something she thought she had lost forever. Belief. Belief that love isn't about becoming one, but about giving each other room to grow. Belief that even without someone next to you, you can still be whole, strong, gentle, true. When June's song left the dock again, it wasn't to say goodbye. It was to accompany. Not to carry someone away, but to bring someone closer. And if you ask, does love ever end? The answer might be yes. But that's not what matters. Because the most beautiful thing love ever did was change us forever, even when the other person is gone. So if you're holding someone in your heart who's no longer here, know this. Loving them doesn't mean remembering them every day. It means living each day well, as if they're still watching over you. This isn't a sad story, it's a true one, and maybe what we need most isn't eternal love, but one summer, one person, one moment, just enough to make us believe again.